G'day everyone and welcome to this Hidden Gems webinar. I'm just turning off my phone. Thank you again for your time. Now there's no webinar next week. Obviously it's Good Friday. So we're going to make a quick start given we've got 5 companies presenting today. So first up we have MicroX, ASX company MX1, ASX code MX1, market cap around $102 million, a 1-year return of minus 35%. The company designs, develops and manufactures ultra lightweight carbon X-ray products for healthcare. We welcome back Managing Director, Peter Rowland. Peter, over to you. Thank you.
Good afternoon and hello everyone. If you'd like to put the next slide up. So look, MicroX is all about miniaturizing X-ray. This picture here just describes the concept. What you see there, the big white thing, is a conventional X-ray tube, about 25 kilograms. Our technology allows us to shrink that at the same performance to about 1.5 kilograms, which obviously makes the whole business of designing an X-ray machine an awful lot easier. The next slide. So strategy in this, we've got a breakthrough technology. Lots of people all over the world have been trying to develop this carbon nanotube X-ray source. We've got there first. The question is, how do we monetize that? The answer is we're looking for a very early commercial success, and we're looking for the low-hanging fruit, the products that give the highest margin by providing with this new technology the biggest customer benefit. We're trying to commercialize high in the value chain just so that we can leverage the margins that we earn based on the core technology. The 4 products that that are our choice for that low-hanging fruit, high margin products are I'll come to in a minute. If you look at the next slide, please. That's just a corporate snapshot of the company where we are today. You can obviously see these slides later. I won't go through in detail. The next slide, another snapshot just of what our factory looks like here in Adelaide. Highly vertically integrated, all our design and manufacturing in-house here. And we've established a subsidiary company in Seattle, Washington, which is where we're managing some of our growing US-based business from. Next slide. So I'll go through the 4 different business units that we're structured in now, just to give you an idea of the products and the direction. This was obviously our first mobile digital radiography. Next slide. It's basically a much lighter mobile X-ray cart to be used in hospitals and a variety of other locations. To give you an idea, it competes against systems that are 500 or 600 kilograms. Our technology means the whole cart, the whole imaging system is 95 kilograms, which allows us use in deployed military hospitals, temporary facilities. That was very, very important in COVID times. But also there's a service here in Adelaide doing door-to-door X-ray where you can get X-rayed in your front living room with our product. So the lightweight size and just allows a whole new mobility in X-ray. Next slide. Our strategy for commercializing this is multiple paths to market. We have some direct sales here in Australia. We're going through independent distributors in North America and Europe. And we have some one at the moment and negotiating other major OEM global partners. So technology well proven. We've got over 250 units in service in 30 countries around the world. As I said, COVID was very good for us because mobile X-ray was a primary tool on the front line of diagnosing COVID. And a major new commercial push we're starting this year. Next slide, please. So the next business unit we have, we're calling the Xray Camera. And this is all about seeing differently. Next slide. Basically, this was something that we were asked to develop, and we were given $2.5 billion by the Australian Defence Force to see if there was a way we could avoid what you're seeing in these pictures. If you've got an unexploded bomb, terrorist weapon, the first thing that the bomb disposal technician needs is an X-ray to see what it is and how to deal with it. At the moment, there's no choice but with conventional X-ray to go up and get a lot closer to the device than you'd really like to be. Our technology is designed to try and avoid that. Next slide. And this is what we successfully developed for the Defence Force, and we're now commercializing. We call it a camera because it works like a camera. It's self-contained. There's no separate detector that you have to put behind the object of interest. So like a camera, you just point and shoot. The nice thing about that is that allows this unit to be picked up by a bomb disposal robot and taken downrange. So the human doesn't need to go anywhere near the dangerous bit. And we get a high beamed to a safe distance, a high resolution image of what's inside the backpack. Next slide. So preparing to launch this exciting new product in a few months. The addressable market is huge, 1.8 billion, because it turns out there's a very large number of, there's 468 police bomb squads just in North America. Each bomb squad obviously would want one of these. It's a marketing dream because however we choose to price this, it's a rare bomb squad commander who decides that it's too expensive and he's going to ask his lads to go into harm's way and do it the old-fashioned way. So I was actually at a bomb technicians conference in Washington, DC a couple of weeks ago, and the feedback on this product was just amazing. So a launch around the middle of the year. We'll be doing some customer trials in the lead up. We're already doing a lot of pre-sales and marketing to give that the most exciting launch. Next slide, please. From that security application, and as you see from that, MicroX is commercializing simultaneously in both medical and security markets. We've won 2 interesting contracts from the US Department of Homeland Security, basically the TSA for those who've been through American airports. Next slide. Basically, we're trying to avoid this problem, which you might have experienced. The concept is to shrink the X-ray component so that it can be part of a self-service checkpoint. That's the vision of the TSA. Actually, this was a vision that was shared with the British government. We won 2 contracts from the British Department for Transport, and that gives birth to the next slide. The concept that we can shrink X-ray so it becomes opponent. It's like passport control with the sliding gates. You use your boarding card to access, read your passport, scans your face, scans your body, and this little X-ray package gives a CT image of your bag, which can be checked by automated software. So we've had 2 contracts from the TSA to develop this. The TSA very excited because this is going to change the future of checkpoints in every American airport, and obviously from there, the world. Next slide. And lastly, our back to the medical. Another factor of another benefit of this CNT technology is the ability to electronically switch the tubes on and off. If you look at the next slide. Instead of a picture at the left, if you've ever enjoyed a CT X-ray, you don't actually understand underneath the covers all that massive detectors and high voltage power supplies and wiring and X-ray tubes. That whole gantry is rotating at about 200 revolutions per minute around the patient, which explains why they're very unreliable and very expensive. Our concept here is to, as you can see in the middle picture, we have 29 little miniature X-ray tubes, which we electronically flash on and off in turn, creating the illusion of a rotating X-ray beam, but with no moving parts. We're commercializing this with a contract we've got from the Australian government, the Australian Medical Future Fund, through the Australian Stroke Alliance. And the target is brain imaging for stroke diagnosis. If you have a stroke, it's either a clot or a bleed. 3/4 of strokes are clots, and they are very effectively treated by an early administration of a drug called TPA. But it's a clot-busting drug. You can't inject it unless you know that there's no bleed, because if there is a bleed, you'll kill the patient by them bleeding out. So the diagnosis has to be a CT image to rule out the bleed. We can do that with a product that is a fraction of the size and weight and cost. Next slide. The goal is to be able to make that, because it is so small and so light and so cheap, to be able to put that in every ambulance, which gives us an absolutely huge addressable market. We hope to be doing patient trials within about two years from now. So next slide. The nice thing is that the benefits, the health benefits of early stroke diagnosis and treatment is being proved by these giant vans which contain conventional CTs. So the world of stroke diagnosis is rapidly moving to the point that this is the new standard of care. Next slide. So MicroX basically is one company, but 4 different businesses. That's our focus. Each one, I've addressed them in the sequence with which we'll be rolling them out. You can see the dates to first sales and the large addressable markets for each of these product opportunities. Next slide. And we've got a lot of initiatives in the short term and long term in train, providing good news flow. And that is our last slide. I'll leave it open for question.
Thanks, Peter. I've always found this a fascinating business. In terms of your technology. So with the technology, there's obviously some clear advantages in terms of being portable, its size, its weight. Does it have any cost benefits when you go and sell it compared to what hospitals, etc., use normally?
Yeah, the cost benefit comes from the fact that the equipment can become much smaller and therefore less complex and therefore less expensive. So it's the simplicity and small size makes them simpler and therefore a lot cheaper. And it allows you to use it in new places that you can't use large bulky equipment.
And can you talk us through the sales process? I mean, you are dealing with airports and hospitals, kind of government-like bodies. Does that make the sales process protracted compared to selling to an ordinary market?
Look, in medical markets are very conservative, so the sales process is always slower than you'd like. On the security side, particularly with the airports, the fact that all American airport security is run by the TSA, they're paying us to develop this. So we're already, in cahoots with the organization that's going to fund it. In the medical side, we're making huge progress with our sales efforts, opening up new distributorships, and we'll be planning to do the same with the Argus Xray Camera.
And what's the time frame to that sales process?
Slide a couple of slides ago gave you our expectations on first sales.
Sure.
I mean, our first product, mobile ER, is already in the market, so it's a build up there. First sales on the camera will happen just after the middle of this year, probably July, and we'll start to build as we get units into test in some of the big the people like the FBI that we met just recently are really keen to test this and evaluate it, and then the sales follow after that.
And it seems like your share price has been under pressure. So there's some concerned shareholders there. You do have $20 million in cash, and looking through the top 20, it looks like Regal's sold down. What's the future look like?
I've given up trying to predict our sales. But particularly in a volatile market where we're a bit nervous of growth stocks. But our company just goes from strength to strength. In terms of the technology, the progress towards developing these products, and now the commercial and arrangements with distribution to get them into the market. So our share price is not reflecting the company's future. That's just getting stronger and stronger.
You know what shareholders are like? They're always impatient. And can you talk to the competitive market and who you compete with?
We're trying in these. Our first product, the bedside imager, does have competitors, because that was an established market in which we wanted to prove this new technology. But the other three products have no competitors. Nobody can do the things that we're doing in those three. That's the whole point. And because there's no competitors, we're price makers, not price takers. And the margins that flow from those are delightfully generous. And I believe that you've donated a product into the Ukraine. Is that right? That's right. We've had a number of sales from the US. Sadly, not from Australia, but in the US, we've dispatched, I think, about 11 units now into the Ukraine to help rebuild the medical capabilities that have been destroyed there, and help them set up, particularly because it's so lightweight. It's a very suitable unit for emergency deployed hospitals in that kind of war environment where there's very little infrastructure. It's battery operated and easily mobile and can do the job. Great, Peter. That's all we have time for. A really great story, incredible technology. I'd love to get you back on sometime soon. Thank you. Always happy to talk about it. Thank you. See you later. Next up, we have Microbar, Life Sciences, ASX code MAP, market cap of around 114 million. If you haven't heard of it, it's because it listed this week. The company is a precision microbiome science company powering medical innovation to transform human health. We have with us the CEO, Dr. Luke Reid. Luke, over to you. Thank you.
Thank you, Tim. Chronic diseases are the leading cause of death and disability worldwide. They affect 6 in 10 people. We all know a loved one that's been impacted by either cancer, depression, diabetes, inflammatory bowel, heart, or another chronic disease. What you might not know is that your gut health, and more specifically, your gut microbiome, which is the trillions of organisms that live in your gut, are actually a key missing piece in resolving many of those chronic diseases. And because of that, these organisms represent one of the biggest untapped opportunities to improve human health through testing, understanding, and treating your gut microbiome. So at Microba, over the past 4 years, we've built a world-leading precision microbiome company to unlock that market opportunity. And I feel like we're really now on the cusp of establishing a dominant global position in both microbiome testing and in therapeutic development from the microbiome to advance healthcare. Next slide, please. Microba is not your typical biotech company. We're commercial stage, already delivering global revenues. We have 2 core business segments. We have our microbiome testing services that are delivering global revenues through an expanding distribution partner network. And we have our data-driven drug discovery platform that's generating multiple novel therapeutic assets. To give you a summary of the investment highlights, we operate in an emerging market segment with strong growth and world-leading technology. We've established global microbiome testing distribution channels with over 20,000 tests sold to date. We've established partnerships with large multinationals, and we believe we have the best microbiome data bank in the world. And from that data bank, we have our first drug candidate scheduled to enter a phase 1 clinical trial later this year. In addition, we have an exciting cancer program together with leading cancer centres across North America and Australia. And underpinning all of this, we have a truly world-class team, including one of Australia's most distinguished clinical scientists, Professor Ian Fraser, who's the inventor of Gardasil, the cervical cancer vaccine, which is now a Merck-owned drug, which generates more than $3 billion in annual sales. So with all of this de-risking that we've completed, we felt it was the right time to accelerate the growth of our microbiome testing services and rapidly advance our key drug development programs. So just this week, we successfully completed an initial public offering on the ASX, which raised $30 million to support this growth. We have a long-term supportive shareholder base with international, institutional, family office and high net worth investors from across the globe, including the United States, London, Hong Kong and Singapore. And we also have some of Australia's most well-regarded small cap growth funds supporting us, including Perennial, Thorney and Alia. And through the IPO round, we also brought on board a significant strategic investor in New York Stock Exchange listed synthetic biology leader, Ginkgo Bioworks. Next slide, please. Our commercial opportunity to capture this market opportunity is summarised here. We deliver testing services globally to clinicians, consumers and research clients together with market-leading distribution partners. Those services build a large proprietary microbiome data bank with consented and de-identified customer data. And we then mine that data bank to discover and develop multiple novel therapeutic assets to ultimately execute pharma out-licensing transactions. Next slide, please. The reason why we have a competitive advantage in this field is because we have the world-leading technology for measuring the human gut microbiome. And we've demonstrated this technology as best in class, including through a recent peer-reviewed publication in Frontiers of Microbiology. So what I'll do now is I'll quickly take you through each of the 3 parts of Microba's business, starting with services, a quick overview of our data bank and our therapeutics. Next slide, please. One more forward. We're building a leading microbiome testing company through a globally scalable distribution partner model. We have a growing number of market-leading distribution partners that we have hand-selected to work with. And we have new partnerships which we've recently executed in the US and Middle East, and an expanding pipeline which we expect to all accelerate our revenue growth. Next slide, please. And here's what that rapidly growing distribution network looks like today. Focusing on the 3 recently executed partners, firstly, SynLab in the middle. They're Europe's largest pathology company. They're essentially the Sonic healthcare equivalent of Europe. And after a successful pilot last year, they committed to a formal launch in Spain and are now expanding that partnership across a number of additional countries across Europe. We also have 2 major new distribution partners recently signed, which are scheduled for launch soon. Genova Diagnostics, we signed just before Christmas. They're a leading GI pathology company based in the US, headquartered out of North Carolina. And that partnership will enable us to access and open up that US healthcare market. So we're excited to see that product launch into market before the end of this financial year. G42, we just signed in February, another exciting distribution partnership covering the Middle East. They're a leading health tech company and health services company headquartered in Abu Dhabi. They're very well capitalized. They recently raised $800 million led by Silver Lake to fuel their growth. And we also aim to see that product launch into market before the end of this financial year. There's also another partner, which we hope to announce soon at the end of that pipeline, and an expanding pipeline of new potential distribution partners, for key regions that the team are targeting, including regions such as Canada, Japan, the United Kingdom, Germany, and Hong Kong. So we're excited about the growth profile ahead for this scalable international testing services business that we've built over the past 4 years. Next slide, please. In addition to growing international revenues, those revenues also generate high-value data, which enables us to discover and develop those novel therapeutics. Next slide, please. We believe this is the most valuable microbiome data bank in the world, which is continuing to grow as our services grow. And this enables us to leverage machine learning and artificial intelligence approaches to discover and develop multiple novel therapeutics to address major chronic diseases. And we focused on 3 key programs that we're executing today. Next slide, please. One more forward. We've established a unique, repeatable platform driving drug discovery from the gut microbiome. And that platform enables us to develop drugs in a fraction of the normal time, leveraging our big data approach. We have established 3 excellent drug development programs. Our first in inflammatory bowel disease, where our lead candidate is currently being manufactured in Switzerland, ready for a phase 1 clinical trial scheduled for the end of this year. We also have an exciting cancer immunotherapy program in partnership with leading cancer centres across the US and Australia. And finally, we have an exciting program which we just recently signed and initiated with strategic investor and drug discovery partner, Ginkgo Bioworks. And I'll give you some more detail on that exciting relationship. Next slide, please. Ginkgo Bioworks are a Boston-headquartered synthetic biology leader with a circa $5 billion market cap. And they're essentially seeking to become the Google of biology. They have some very well-regarded shareholders, including Bill Gates' private investment fund, Cascade, together with Viking, Bailey Gifford, Tiger, and a range of others. They have some big partners, including Roche, Bayer, and a range of others. And we've seen this as a fantastic marriage, which brings together our therapeutic platform, the ability to find those key therapeutic organisms within the gut microbiome, together with what's known as their Ginkgo Foundry, which is a highly automated, large-scale synthetic and industrial biology facility based in Boston with those robots that you see on the slide. This essentially enables us to move rapidly with unprecedented scale to develop these novel drugs and their supporting data packages. So what this looked like is Ginkgo Bioworks invested $3.5 million into Microba's IPO as a cornerstone strategic investor. Then together, we're investing in a 2-year program of work to identify drug candidates for 3 key autoimmune conditions. So an incredibly exciting opportunity, particularly with such a validating and respected US partner. So in total, 3 excellent therapeutic programs, and each of these programs represent a substantial commercial opportunity. And with our progression into the clinic this year, our potent novel therapeutic assets and strong IP packages that surround them, we have that first big pharma deal in our sights. Next slide, please. In terms of big pharma deals, there continues to be strong deal precedents for microbiome-based therapeutics, with deals ranging between $500 million and up to $2 billion in total transaction value. Next slide, please. So to summarize the key take-homes, we're building a leading microbiome testing company with new distribution partners about to launch and a growing pipeline to open up additional major markets, all accelerating our global revenue growth. We have the best microbiome data bank in the world, and leveraging that data bank, our platform is delivering multiple therapeutic assets, setting up for those big pharma transactions. I'm excited about the year ahead. We have a lot of news flow with a range of key milestones and catalysts. We started the year with 3 big deals in Genova, G42, and Ginkgo Bioworks, but there's much more to come. For the services business, we'll see those distribution partnerships launch in the Middle East and the US, and commencing operations to launch into market. Further expansion across Europe with SynLab, Europe's largest pathology company. the launch of a next generation version of our healthcare testing product, and we hope to announce additional distribution partnerships which are expanding with that pipeline targeting key major markets. And just to close out on the therapeutic side, a range of key additional milestones for our IBD program, for completion of our pre-IND meeting with the FDA, GMP manufacturing being complete, ethics approval to initiate that phase 1 study, and then phase 1 initiation and first dose in humans. For the cancer program, we aim to have initial data in hand to support lead selection and progression into preclinical validation. And that autoimmune program in partnership with Ginkgo Bioworks, well and truly into motion, developing those important novel therapeutics to treat 3 key autoimmune conditions. So I'll stop there and open up for questions.
Thanks, Luke. I've only got time for a couple. Big question. So how does the distribution and revenue model work for your testing services? And kind of who are your customers in regards to using that testing?
So I'll speak generally, not to disclose any specifics for a given partner, but the partner sells the tests for somewhere between $300 to $400. They produce the testing kit under license from us. They also handle all of the sales, marketing, and distribution with their customers. We also enable them to perform the laboratory processing of the patient sample in their lab to produce the raw data. We then take in that raw data and process it with our world-leading technology to generate a report for the partner to deliver back to the patient. We charge them a per test fee of circa $90, and we earn a 95% margin on that per test fee. So it's a fantastic scalable business for Microba that's growing with the expansion of that international distribution partner network. In terms of who's ordering the test, we see that the typical customer is either a worried or proactively well individual looking to improve their health, or on the healthcare side, an individual that's working directly with a healthcare practitioner with either a gastrointestinal issue or a chronic health issue, which is driven by the microbiome.
Great, thanks, Luke. That's all we have time for. There's a couple of questions you could answer directly if you have time, but congratulations on your IPO.
Thank you, Jim.
Okay, next up we have Starfarma, ASX code SPL, market cap around 363 million, 1 year return of minus 56%. The company engages in the research, development and commercialisation of Dendroma products for pharmaceutical, life science and other applications. We welcome Dr. Jackie Fairley, who is the CEO. Jackie, over to you. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Tim, and thank you for the opportunity to participate today. If I could just go forward 2 slides, please. Thank you. So what I'm going to do today in the time available is just going to be a very brief overview of Starfarma's unique Dendroma platform. It's a unique technology platform that can be used to improve the delivery of existing drugs, but also has developed some really exciting products, including most recently an antiviral nasal spray, which is already registered in more than 30 countries. The technology platform has allowed us to develop a deep portfolio of products, particularly in the Dendroma delivery area, and I'll talk more what we call DEP, which is Dendroma enhanced product, and I'll talk about some of those in subsequent slides. But we also have, and we're a little bit unusual in that we have a number of marketed products, either marketed through partners or marketed directly in some cases, in the case of the Viralis antiviral nasal spray, and those are distributed in a number of countries, and I'll go into that detail subsequently. We're well funded. We have a very good institutional shareholder base with some of the leading institutions both in Australia and also overseas. And as you can see across the bottom of the slide there, we also have a deep portfolio of partnerships. Now, next slide, please. So just very briefly touching on the portfolio of the products. So it's unusual that a company the size of Starfarma, we have about 50 staff, is able to develop such a deep portfolio of both marketed products, but also really exciting development candidates. So on the left-hand side, we have 3 phase 2 anti-cancer products, all of which are utilizing our DEP technology, our DEP delivery technology. And beyond that, we have an extensive range of other products in our portfolio, which we will bring through and move into clinical development. The strategy for these products is to take them through to clinical proof of concept. So typically that would be the completion of phase 2, although in some instances could be earlier, and then to license the product. And I'll talk briefly about a couple of those candidates later in the presentation. And then in the bottom right-hand side, and I will talk briefly about these also, we've been able to sign up a number of really exciting partnerships using our delivery technology that do not require Starfarma to fund those programs. So the AstraZeneca program on the top there is being funded by AstraZeneca for well over $100 million. And we have a free carried interest through royalties and milestones, and I'll talk about those. Next slide, please. But first of all, I just want to touch on some of the highlights of the Dendroma enhanced product, or the DEP benefits. So this is a technology platform, a true platform that can be used in it's very versatile. So it can be used with small molecule drugs. It can be used with antibody drug conjugates. It can be used with radiotherapeutics, which is a growing category in the cancer space. And what the Dendroma technology delivers to both Starfarma and to our partners is the ability to improve the efficacy of agents, and I'll specifically talk about some of the cancer drugs that we're working on, to improve the efficacy through tumour targeting. So we get 40 to 70 times as much drug in tumour tissue, delivering it with a Dendroma than you would with the original drug. We can take an off-patent cancer drug, or any drug actually, an off-patent drug, and then apply the technology to it, put it on our Dendroma scaffold, and that will allow us to get 20 years new patent life. So we can essentially get renewal of the patents, improved safety, improved pharmacokinetics, so long-acting products, whereas ordinarily they might require multiple injections. We can develop long-acting products, improving solubility, and great flexibility. So there are a range of benefits for the technology. Next slide, please. And the technology also allows us, as I mentioned earlier, to work in a whole range of different areas. So on the left-hand side there is chemotherapeutics or anti-cancer agents, and we actually already have 3 clinical and one other, and a number of other preclinical agents in that category. AstraZeneca has signed a multi-product license in that category. Merck has also signed a multi-product license in the Merck has also entered into a partnership in the antibody drug conjugate area. We have a partnership with Genentech. And so there's a lot of potential application in the oncology space that also can be applied in radiotheranostics. That's a particular kind of anti-cancer therapy where you're using radioactive agents. But it's a very flexible technology platform. And we can also use it in non-oncology, and we have a partnership with the Chinese company Chaisun. We've also applied it to antiviral agents. So if you go to next slide, please. What I wanted to do in this very brief presentation is really just to use one of our partnerships with AstraZeneca, which is one of the world's largest pharmaceutical companies, and to illustrate the way in which the technology can be used. What we did in this situation is the Dendroma technology was able to overcome a significant problem with a cancer drug which they had in development, which was very efficacious, but unfortunately excessively toxic. By using the Dendroma technology, we were able to improve its therapeutic index by more than 20-fold, which is a really very significant improvement. And in return for that, we entered into a multi-product license with AstraZeneca. The first product in that category is a drug called AZD0466, which is actually now one of the leading hematology oncology development candidates for AstraZeneca. And we have a milestone and royalty deal with AstraZeneca for the use of our technology without any investment from us. And that will allow us to, based on the estimates that we've received from AstraZeneca in terms of the size of that market, allow us to potentially yield significant revenue, so up to $2.4 billion for that one single drug. It's a very scalable technology, and you can see in the middle there, we can sign multiple partnerships, which give us a free carried interest in lots of areas and lots of therapeutic areas as well. Next slide, please. So AZD0466 is a really exciting oncology drug. It's already in clinical trial with AstraZeneca. We've received $7 million US in milestones. The total milestones are 124 million. About half of that before approval, half post-approval. They are aiming for an expedited approval pathway. And then we have escalating royalties downstream. So as I said, the potential to earn in excess of 2.4 billion in relation to that product alone. And this technology can be used for multiple such products. So with the partnerships really offer very significant opportunity. Next slide, please. Very briefly, we also have a number of internal programs. There are 3 phase 2 oncology products there up on the middle, on the left and middle of the screen: depdocetaxel, depcabazitaxel, depirinotecan. And each one of those is based on a highly successful oncology drug that was selling anywhere between about 600 million and 3 billion per annum. And we've taken those drugs, we've put them into our Dendroma technology, we've patented those, so we now own the rights to those Dendroma versions, and they are all now in phase 2 clinical trials. We're expecting to complete those trials in 2022, and we will intend also to then license those to third parties in return for milestones and royalty deals. So this gives us very significant optionality. Next slide, please. Very briefly, one of those, depcabazitaxel, is a prostate cancer drug. Cabazitaxel is marketed by Sanofi, Jevtana. There are a number of advantages there outlined in that side-by-side comparison, including significant improvements in safety. We've seen that in our human clinical trials, which are ongoing. The lack of need to pre-treat patients to avoid allergic reactions which occur with the original drug, and a significantly longer patent life than the existing product. So there's a very exciting opportunity. Next slide, please. I won't go through the results here, but the preliminary efficacy results that we reported last year in prostate cancer really underline the potential for this technology platform. We've seen excellent levels of efficacy in what are very heavily pre-treated patients. We've seen better response rates than the original drug in terms of PSA decrease, and we saw very high levels of activity even in very heavily pre-treated patients. Next slide, please. One example of these is this elderly gentleman with prostate cancer who's had 33 cycles of other therapy. He has to date received 7 cycles of our product and has achieved an 80% reduction in his PSA. And you can see there is significant shrinkage also in the cancer tissue. Now, very briefly, in the just final remaining minutes, I just want to talk briefly about another product which we've developed recently, Viralis. This is an antiviral nasal spray, which we developed in response partly to the coronavirus pandemic, but with an agent which we had already approved and registered in a number of markets in other products. This is a topical antiviral nasal spray to be used together with vaccines, and especially useful in situations where perhaps vaccines are not efficacious. We all know that vaccines are not 100% effective. And you can see some of the data there in the middle on the right-hand side. What this product delivers is a very convenient, easy to use product, which can be additive to vaccines, masks, and other prevention strategies, highly active in a whole range of the variants alpha, beta, gamma, delta, omicron, more than 99% inactivation by the active ingredient of those, and in a very convenient format for use in travel situations, public transport, healthcare, any other crowded environments. So this is an exciting product. We've launched, it's already registered in a number of markets, registered in more than 30 countries around the world. If you could please go to the next slide. Performs very well in a competitive sense. On the bottom left there, you can see its performance vis-a-vis some of them, another marketed antiviral topical nasal spray there, which is a Boots product, but also there's a Vicks product, which is got a similar profile. Our product is far more effective in terms of inactivation of the coronavirus or the SARS-CoV-2 virus. And if you just move to the next slide, as I mentioned, already registered in 30 countries around the globe. This has been possible because of the regulatory strategy which we've employed and the fact that this was a known active, which was already, on which we had a very significant body of data. This is registered in a number of countries, Europe, UK, countries in Asia, Middle East, and we'll be rolling that out into other countries. And we're seeing significant growth in revenues in that area. And just finally, the next slide, please, or the final slide. So Starfarma has a strong balance sheet. We've got more than 50 million cash on hand. We're seeing strong revenue growth in the Viralis space, and we're seeing significant progress across multiple programs in our DEP area. So the clinical candidates I mentioned, as well as those really exciting partnerships. So I think I'll leave it there, Tim, and leave some time for Q&A.
Thank you, Jackie. There's a lot to get through there. I appreciate that. I'm just back on Viralis. What are your plans for the product going forward, and which launches are next? And there were some questions in regards to India and Saudi Arabia.
Yeah, so we've recently registered the product in Saudi Arabia. We've also recently had the product registered in the UK. So in terms of, our strategy is really to roll it out globally. We're focusing on markets where there's a good commercial opportunity, where we're seeing good engagement with distributors in those markets. Sometimes we focus on markets where the vaccination rates are not as high for a variety of reasons. So Vietnam has been an extremely positive market for us. We've seen really very, very significant demand there. Their vaccination rates have lagged, and often the vaccines which are available are perhaps less efficacious than some of the ones in some other more developed markets. So we'll be rolling it out across all of those, all of the main regions, Europe, Asia, Middle East, and we will also be, in terms of launches, I expect the next launches will be most likely UK and in the Middle East. The Middle East was an interesting market. We're looking to actually get it into the Middle East ahead of the World Cup. So we're looking to roll it out across not only Saudi, but also into a range of other markets there.
That makes sense. We've just got time for one more question. So you've got a lot of programs, a lot of options here. Which programs should investors be kind of focused on right now?
Well, we're seeing progress across all of the programs, but I've dedicated quite a lot of time here to the DEP technology because, the DEP technology is a key driver of value for the company. We've got three clinical stage assets internally, and then we've got these really exciting partnerships which are progressing. AstraZeneca has opened up these new clinical trials for the AZD0466 products. So I think that partnerships in both partnered and internal DEP programs, as well as Viralis, certainly there's progress across all of those.
Thank you, Jackie. Thank you for your time. We have some further questions there if you have time to answer them. If not, I'll send them through to you over the weekend.
Great. All right. Thank you.
Thanks, Jackie.
Thank you.
Next up, we have RLF AgTech, ASX code RFL, market cap. Don't have a market cap yet because it's an IPO that's arriving shortly. The company creates farming innovations that are powered by technology and inspired by Earth. We have with us Ken Hancock, who is the CEO and Global MD. Over to you. Thanks, Ken.
Great, thanks, Tim. Thank you. So RLF AgTech, as Tim mentioned, we're about to list on the IPO. We just on the ASX. Sorry, we've just closed our IPO raise. But essentially, RLF AgTech is an advanced crop nutrition company. So we're producing products and formulations for global agriculture to significantly increase yield and quality in crops. And of course, just recently, more than ever, we've probably been seeing some out of the Ukraine situation. We've been seeing a lot of news around high fertiliser prices, the issues around food production, inflation on food, etc. Well, in our business, we've been for many years about actually producing technology that is far more efficient, can reduce fertiliser inputs whilst increasing food production. So we see some really great opportunity. We also do it in a very sustainable way. So one of the major issues in agriculture and fertiliser has been that globally we've been over inputting far too much fertiliser into a lot of the soil around the world for many decades now, and it's creating a number of limitations in our production. So with our, in our business, we look to solve a number of those big issues. Thanks. I'll just move on to the next slide. Thank you. Yeah. So in terms of our business has really been developed around what we call our plant proton delivery technology, and we've been the first internationally to focus on this area of tech, where we've and that particular technology has been able to give us very consistent results in a range of different environments around the world. Here we started in Australia, testing and trialling and commercialising the technology in the broadacre grain markets, cotton markets, horticulture, etc. But really, we saw the big opportunity to be international. So we've now had more than 1,000 independent trials done with our products in a number of markets through Asia, North America, and the Middle East. So we're really looking as in terms of this IPO of expanding our distribution network internationally. We do have first mover advantage with the tech and also in a number of key markets. We've got a real focus on Asia. Today we've got over 100 of our own staff on the ground in Asia, where we're developing a very good foundation to grow into that enormous market. And we do have a diversity in our revenue base as well. So about half of our business comes out of the biggest grain markets in the world, being rice, maize, and wheat. And then the balance comes out of horticulture and mainly cotton markets. So we've got a good spread of revenue, and we've got a good history of growth in our business as well. So pre-COVID, we were growing at a CAGR of 60% per year. We've just come off a record December half for us, where we grew revenues by over 45%. Thanks. Next slide. In terms of the IPO, I mentioned that we just raised $8.5 million. We've got a target listing date of around the 20th of April, just waiting for the ASX to confirm that final date, and we'll come on with a market cap of circa $36.5 million. We're really, today we've got revenues of circa $10 million. We were profitable in 2021. We're really now about rapidly expanding our distribution and driving our revenues. So we're going to do that through increasing our existing sales teams in these international markets, increasing some of our manufacturing capacity, and also furthering our R&D. So we do all of our R&D here in Australia. Our main laboratory is here in Western Australia, actually, and we do. However, in our R&D team, we've got 22 staff. Outside of our Australian team, we've got staff based in Asia, technical personnel that do in-field trials, and actually expand on the laboratory work that we do. So we see R&D as a really critical component in our business. and we're continuing to invest in that, along with branding and distribution, and building a very strong distribution network in Asia. Today, we've got over 400 distributors, but in Asia alone, in our market, there's more than 310,000 dealers of crop inputs. So we've got enormous room to expand into that market, plus other work that we're doing in markets like North America and the Middle East. Thanks. Next slide, please. In terms of our board, we've got an experienced board, 3 independent directors and 3 exec directors, headed by our chairman, Don McClay. Don was previously chair of Credit Corp for 12 years, and taking that business from around 20 million market cap to 2 billion. We've also got Paul McKenzie, who very experienced in agriculture, running a company called Agrarian, who is advising some of the very large farmers in Australia, and Liza Carpini, ex-Northern Star. Also, my co-exec director, Gavin Ball, here in Perth, and Dr. Michael Liu, our CEO in Asia. Thank you. Next slide, please. In terms of the actual core technology and how it's different, so whilst we do have a strong nutrient basis to our formulations, and we focus on those the nutrients that are very difficult to get out of the soil, things like zinc, copper, manganese, boron, molybdenum, high value nutrients, but critical to crop yield and quality. What we do is we complex those nutrients with a proton source, and instead of going through the soil, which is very inefficient, and there are a lot of limitations to production through soil application. Instead of going through the soil, we actually apply our technology through the seed and through the leaf of the plant. And we really add to the role of photosynthesis, which is about sugar production, which is increasing sugars in the plant and giving the plant energy. So when we complex these critical micronutrients and make them very available to the plant, we also increase the plant's sugar production, metabolism, and growth, not only above the ground, but below the ground. And growing below the ground is very important in terms of growing larger root systems, where we can intercept more nutrient that's in the soil, more moisture, and get increased plant yields. But importantly, there's another component to that, which is that by increasing that root system growth with the technology, we actually start to play a significant role in carbon sequestration, and we'll go into that in a few slides' time. Thank you. Just in terms of results, and seeing is believing has been my experience with growers all around the world. And here on these slides, you can see a few different results with the product. On the left-hand side in Asia, that's a maize crop, top left-hand corner, and you can see with the plant proton delivery technology how we've grown above the ground, and also we're increasing the root system below the ground. On the right-hand side, potato crop, where we're increasing not only in horticulture the yields and the quantities, but we want to improve quality. The growers get paid around quality, so more consistency in size and colour, flavour, etc. And you see that here in the watermelon shot, and that's also a good indicator of the role in human health that we play as well. So when we increase the nutrient status of the plant actually produces more vitamins and minerals as well. And so in terms of the food we eat, we improve the nutrient status. On the right-hand side at the bottom, you can see a very clear difference there. Exactly the same base fertiliser applied, just our PPD tech applied to that plant. You can see how much healthier the plant is on the right-hand side. Thank you. Next slide, please. In terms of our market categories, there's 3 key market categories that we focus on. Our seed priming technology, where we're the first in the world to commercialise this seed priming technology, where we put nutrient inside the seed rather than just on the outside of the seed. So we realised through our research and development that we could get significant and consistent increases in yield with our seed priming technology. We also have what we call a soil and fertigation business, which is where we target nutrient through irrigation. So it's close to the root zone of the crop. And then the largest part of our business is our foliar business, which is where we're providing products to be sprayed onto the foliage of the crop. Across those three categories in 2021, we achieved a 68% gross profit. So we do achieve, due to the returns on investments that we can generate for our customers, we return significantly better GP than many of our competitors. Thank you. Just in terms of our market, I mentioned we're currently circa 10 million in revenue. However, we've got, we're really only in the very early stages of development of a number of key markets around the world, and see enormous opportunity for growth. Australia represents only about 1% of global crop inputs, and so that's why it made a lot of sense for us to really start to develop our business internationally. And today, we have distribution in a number of markets in Asia, including Thailand, Vietnam, Myanmar, Cambodia, China. We've got work going on in markets like Canada, trial work in the US, and Brazil. So we see a lot of opportunity to help grow food production in these key markets around the world. Thank you. Outside of our business in growing yields for growers, we're also very much in the carbon space. And so we've set up a subsidiary called RLF Carbon, and this is to play a significant role in carbon sequestration in Australian agriculture, which today growers are now able to, through the soil carbon method, actually monetize the carbon that they build in the soil. But this is a very new area in agriculture. Our technology is very much, as I mentioned, designed to increase carbon. So recently we just signed an LOI with the Commonwealth Bank with the view of CBA coming on as a strategic partner in this area to help us develop the market. However, it really is a significant area. We see that basically on the current carbon prices, that we can increase in Australian grain markets. There's an opportunity to increase what we call Australian carbon credit units by about 3.6 billion units over the life of a project, or on current carbon prices in the range of about $130 billion. But farmers need technology to access and make changes to their programs and be able to take advantage. So I'll just go on to the next slide. And so we see ourselves as filling that gap for the production technology to be able to deliver on farm and help them change their practice. Not only they can reduce their fertiliser inputs by around 20%, so that saves them on emissions, but they can also increase that yield. And here in Australian independent trials, our average yield increase in the grain sector is 14.6%. So giving the growers around a 5 to 6 times return on investment. So we see a huge opportunity in the carbon markets as well. And post IPO, we're going to be building out that part of our business. So I think that brings me to the end of the presentation. So thanks, Tim. If there's any...
Yeah, thanks, Ken. Just quickly, only got a couple of minutes. What's the history of the business?
Yeah, so founded here in Australia. And then several years ago, we started trialling our products in the Asian markets. We thought that in terms of the growing demand for food internationally, then it made a lot of sense for us to start to get a foothold in those markets. So the technology was developed here in Australia. We made some real breakthroughs in that tech about 5 years ago that allowed us to stabilise the technology and make it practical for international distribution, and then started to really ramp up our revenues internationally.
Yeah, you've done well there, and so we've had some potash companies on board recently, and we've spoken about the kind of geopolitical risks in Russia and what that's meant for fertiliser prices, which are up 25%. And then sulphate of potash, SOP, is up 80%. How do you compete with those sort of products? Do you sit side by side with them, or are they direct competitors?
Actually, they're complementary. So you need a number of critical nutrients to grow. Potassium that you mentioned, potash, that's one of the 3 macronutrients. So nitrogen, phosphorus, and potassium as critical nutrients to grow. We specialise in the much higher value nutrients, zinc, copper, manganese, boron, molybdenum, and we improve their utilisation in the plant. They're all critical to yield and quality as well. So actually, it's complementary. Our proposition to market is really, out of the current spend on fertiliser, convert around 20% of that spend into our technology, and then we can get those increases in yield, quality, and also carbon production.
Yeah, that makes sense. That makes sense.
Yeah.
Okay, that's all we have time for. I'm sorry. Really interesting story. When did you say you list next week sometime?
20th of April is the target date.
Which broker did the listing, can I ask?
Sorry.
Couple of them? Don't worry, I got you on the spot there.
No, sorry. Discovery Capital here in Perth managed the offer for us.
Okay, great. Right, Ken, that's all we have time for.
Thank you.
Catch up and do this again another time.
Thanks a lot. Thank you. See you. Bye.
Next up, and finally, we have ResApp, ASX code RAP, market cap around $72 million, 1 year return of up 23.5%. The company is developing the world's first COVID-19 instant screening test that will use cough sounds to indicate the presence of a COVID-19 infection. We welcome back Dr. Tony Keating, who is the CEO and MD. Tony, thanks for your time.
Great, thanks, Tim. And thanks again for the opportunity to present to the Xray Cafe webinar. So next slide, please. And again. Great. So I guess for those who haven't seen the ResApp story in the past, I want to give a little bit of an overview of where ResApp has come from and where we are today, importantly. So ResApp was originally spun out of the University of Queensland roughly 7 years ago. It was based on the work by a Professor Udantha Abaratne, and Udantha invented a technology that looked for signatures inside of cough sounds. And so what he postulated was that a cough sound that came out of your lungs contained information about what was going on inside your lungs. And then we could use machine learning technology to pull out those signatures, those signals that are in that cough sound, and match that to particular diseases. And the real genesis of the ResApp technology was funding by the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. So the Gates Foundation were very interested in understanding, could we use this technology to identify pneumonia in children? Pneumonia being the #1 killer of children, especially in the developing world. So over the last 7 years, we've developed this technology further and really have become now the world's leader in audio-based diagnosis of respiratory health. And as I said earlier, the technology looks for sound, looks for signatures in sound, whether it comes from a cough, whether it comes from breathing, whether it comes from snoring, and matches those signatures to different diseases, from pneumonia to asthma to COPD to sleep apnea, and now, which I'll talk about a lot today, is in COVID-19. We are a scientific-based company. We came out of the university, and so we run our clinical trials with leading institutions globally. We publish our results in peer-reviewed journals, and we actually now have regulatory approvals and products in the market in Australia and Europe. Next slide, please. So just to give you a bit of an overview of what our base technology looks like. So this is ResApp DX. So this is our product that's in the market today, being used in Europe, Australia, and Asia to help clinicians diagnose respiratory disease. It uses that AI machine learning to identify signatures in cough sounds to differentially diagnose disease. One of the key benefits for what we do is that we only require a smartphone. So because we just rely on that sound, we can record that sound with the smartphone that's in your pocket. And that gives us a huge advantage, a huge distribution advantage to get this out to as many people as possible. As I said earlier, we have strong clinical evidence over clinical trials. We have publications in peer-reviewed journals, and we actually have regulatory approvals in Europe, Australia, and also in Asia. Just hit next, please. The technology is very simple to use. You simply hold the phone about an arm's length away. The patient coughs 5 times. Next, please. Enters a few details about their birth date, their gender. Next, please. What what symptoms they may have, whether they have a fever, whether they have a runny nose. Next, please. And then we provide instantaneously a result, a diagnosis result based on all those inputs, based on the cough and the symptoms. So in this particular case, we've identified someone who has pneumonia. Next slide, please. So as we take ResApp DX to market, we're partnering with multiple different organizations in multiple markets to get the most bang for our buck, effectively. So here in Australia, we've partnered primarily with telehealth companies. We've partnered with CoView, Doctors on Demand, Phoenix Health, and we've recently partnered with health teams. And so these are different partners to allow us to access Australia through telehealth. So for example, CoView and Doctors on Demand. And in health teams, we're accessing the aged care market. So great opportunities there in Australia. In Europe, we were very fortunate to form a partnership with Medgate last year. Medgate are the leading telehealth providers in Europe, and we're now live on the Medgate platform, which is generating revenue for the company. Just last week, we signed an agreement with the NHS, with the Dartford and Gravesham NHS Trust, which will see ResApp DX piloted throughout the trust, initially in their outpatient respiratory clinic, but we're also looking at expanding to other parts of the NHS Trust. This is a major hospital in North Kent in the UK. In Asia, we're working with AlloDoctor, one of the largest telehealth providers in the world. And in emerging markets, we have some distributors. So we're working with Alara Health in Kenya and Sanrai International across a broad range of emerging markets. And finally, we also have partnerships with pharma companies. And so not only do these get us access to the market, so Janssen, for example, we're part of a multi-country clinical study in the US, Europe, Asia. In AstraZeneca, we're in a clinical study in Japan. So not only do we get access to the market, this is just really strong validation for ResApp's technology. These companies don't do business unless they have a very solid validation for the technology. So next slide, please. So I just want to talk about COVID-19. These are results that we released just over a week ago. And we really see COVID-19 as a really important commercial opportunity for us, but also a really strategic opportunity to accelerate basically the uptake of using cough to diagnose disease globally. We look at COVID through three different areas. We start with screening. So we see some opportunities there, obviously, of identifying COVID-19, instantly without the need for hardware, very scalable, doesn't have the cost of a rapid antigen or PCR test, and really just gives everyone the opportunity to have a test instantaneously. We can also have to manage people at home once they have COVID-19. Pneumonia, which is one of the diseases that we do diagnose in ResApp DX, is an important factor in managing people with COVID-19. And then there's the long-term effects of COVID-19 that we're also investigating from an R&D perspective. Next slide, please. So, many of you on this call will understand COVID-19. It's been in the news for a very long time now. But I thought I'd just put this up just to get some perspective on exactly what COVID-19 looks like. And I think the important thing the important problem that we see is really this third point here, and that's that at the peak of the Omicron variant, Australians were waiting up to 7 days just to get a PCR test results. And that was after actually waiting in a queue, potentially in the rain or the hot sun, before they could even get tested. And we all know that the challenges that we had with rapid antigen testing and the unavailability of those. It's also an uncomfortable situation. Those of you who've had a PCR or rapid antigen test understand that you have to put a nasal swab up your nose to try to get a bit of virus effectively on that swab. And that is not only uncomfortable, it also significantly reduces the real world sensitivity of these tests. If that swab is not able to get a piece of virus, if you don't quite get it in the right spot in the back of your nose, then those tests are simply not going to be accurate. And so, that's one of the real world challenges of this sort of lab-based testing. To give you an example, we're still having 20 million plus cases in the last few weeks, 70,000 deaths in the last 2 weeks. So this virus isn't going away. The world is starting to learn to live with it, but learning to live with it still means we're going to have to continue managing it. Next slide, please. So our clinical study, which we kicked off at the beginning of this year, late last year, we recruited over 700 participants across the US and India. Out of those 700 participants, we recruited over 400 positives. Importantly, what we did was we compared our result to a PCR test. So we didn't use a rapid antigen test. We didn't use self-reported COVID status. We used the gold standard PCR test to compare our cough-based algorithm against. Next slide, please. And so the results out of this test were really, really promising and really excellent, better than what we expected. So if we look at our results for sensitivity, and I'll go through exactly what sensitivity and specificity means on the next slide, but our sensitivity results were at 92%, closer to PCR. Sorry, can I just go back a slide? Closer to the PCR than rapid antigen. And as I said, rapid antigen in the real world is probably only 60 to 80%. Our specificity was lower, but it still provides us with a very useful tool. And I'll explain on the next slide exactly how that works. So let's say that you're using ResApp DX, our ResApp COVID test on 1,000 patients. And let's say that 5% of those patients have COVID-19. So these are the orange dots here. So let's first look at our 92% sensitivity. So next, please. So what that 92% sensitivity means is that we identify 46 people who are positive accurately. We miss 4, but you can imagine, this is still significantly better than the 60 or 70% sensitivity that rapid antigen test gives you. The next, please. So now if we look at specificity, so specificity tells you about the negatives. So on the specificity side, we identify the vast number of people who don't have COVID. So that's a really important fact, right? So if we say that you don't have COVID, you definitely don't have COVID. It's a very high accuracy for ruling out the disease. We do test a number of people who are false positives. So that 190 people that we say, you might be positive. And so the next, please. So in this case, you can look. So these are the ones that we say are positive. So we say that 236 people receive a positive test result. We get some false positives. So this really says this group of people who ResApp says are positive for COVID need further testing. They need further testing to determine whether they are a true positive or if they're a negative. And next, please. But next bit is the real commercial value that ResApp provides. So out of that original cohort of 1,000 people, 764 people, we say are negative. And we say it negative at 99.5% probability that they are negative. So this is very highly accurate. And for these people, we don't require any further testing. So what we've done is we've taken a population of 1,000 people who traditionally would require a rapid antigen or a PCR test. And now 764 of those people no longer require that testing and can go about their day. Next slide, please. So the benefits of this, obviously, it's smartphone based. We don't have any supply chain issues. It's fast, it's instant, and it's low cost. Next, please. It's not invasive. There's none of those swabs. It's cough zones only, and we're likely to see better compliance. You're not having to put that swab in just the right place to get a good result. Next, please. And as I said, it's resource sparing. So we've basically reduced the number of rapid antigen tests by 80%. So that's a huge number of savings for governments, for insurers, and for individuals. And next, please. And with that, we've got significant benefits for the environment. All of those rapid antigen tests are essentially biologically problems. So you can't just dispose of them in the bin. You're supposed to put them in the bag and dispose of them carefully. There's also all the plastic, etc. So it's a major benefits across the board for using a smartphone-based test. Next slide, please. So where are we going from here? So what we've run today has been a pilot demonstration trial. So this gives us a huge amount of confidence that we have a technology that works and that is accurate and has commercial value. But our next step is to run a double-blinded prospective clinical trial. And right now we're in discussions and we're starting the planning for that today. We're engaging with the regulatory bodies, so we must engage with TGA, with FDA, to ensure that we have the data that we need, the context that we need to get regulatory approval. Our history starts in pediatrics, so we obviously want to start looking at pediatrics as well, especially you've seen recently the importance of kids and the transmission of COVID-19 through kids. Obviously moving into patient monitoring and long COVID. But I think most importantly right now, we're in discussions with a number of parties to license or work with those parties to bring this product through to market and then have the greatest chance of having the biggest impact with this technology. So next slide, please. So thank you very much and happy to open the floor for questions.
Thanks, Tony. That's fascinating, and certainly come a long way with those test results. We have a lot of questions here, so we'll talk through them. It's obviously a massive market, very convenient and very cost effective. Is the business model for a consumer to download the app and make a small payment?
Look, our focus here is getting it to market as a direct-to-consumer product. So absolutely, we expect consumers to be using the product to screen themselves for COVID, to work out whether they need rapid antigen testing or PCR testing, or whether they're free to go effectively. Our current model is looking for partners to do that. So whether that is governments who may be able to provide it alongside a check-in app, whether it's corporates who you may want to fly in your airline and they may want to test you before you get on a plane. We're also talking to pharmaceutical companies, to technology companies, preloading on phones, etc. So there's a number of different opportunities to bring it to the market, and whether it's a user pays or an employer pays or a government pays, we're still looking at those different options.
Yeah, certainly, as I said, a lot more convenient and cost effective than walking out and down to the shop. There is a question here though: is a cough always associated with a COVID disease?
So no, I mean you can have COVID without cough, but that doesn't actually affect what we do. So we don't use cough as a symptom as such. So you don't require cough for us as a symptom for us to do an analysis. So you're able to provide a forced cough. Effectively, we use that maneuver, that process of coughing, even if it's a forced cough or a fake cough. We use that to get the air out of your lungs, get the sound out of your lungs, and extract the information. So we're not dependent on someone spontaneously coughing to perform our analysis.
I see. And in terms of TGA and FDA approval, and we've seen some things fast-tracked, particularly in regards to COVID, what are the next stages in that conversation?
Yep. So we've had some informal conversations previously leading up to this data. Right now we have this data. We're putting together packages to send to TGA, FDA, and into Europe. That will be able to enable us to have meaningful conversations with the regulators, so that we can understand exactly what their requirements are, and then go and essentially execute on those requirements to bring the products to market.
And where are the competitors in this space? There's talk of respiratory, is that right? Is there competitors in this space?
Yeah, so I mean, I wouldn't classify respiratory as a competitor. Respiratory looks at management of asthma. So I guess quite a different segment of the market that we're looking at. Our focus primarily is acute presentation. So someone presenting with an acute condition, whether it's a cold or a COVID, or whether it's an asthma exacerbation. Respiratory looks at wheeze, looks at managing that wheeze, which is a symptom of asthma. So very different spaces. Look, there are a number of I guess areas that the whole world is shifting towards this testing at home, and looking at how do we get these sort of clinical grade tests into people's home for whether it's flu, whether it's diabetes, whether it's all these different diseases. We've seen this shift during COVID. Look, we're the ones really leading the field for this cough-based analysis, and that's something we've focused on and we think is by far, it gives us the ability to deliver on a smartphone, which we don't think anyone else has.
And so post those results, does the COVID application become your priority, given you've got sleep check and other avenues?
No, so we're still running a business across a number of different areas, and we always have. So we have sleep check as a business, a direct to consumer, but also looking at partnerships around sleep apnea screening. ResApp DX is primarily focused around the telehealth market, providing telehealth clinicians access to remote diagnosis. Our COVID algorithms actually fit into that product as well. We also have what we call our cough counter product, which we're working with pharmaceutical companies in clinical trials. And then there's the COVID screening product. So no, underlying all of these technologies is the same technology base. And then as we essentially productize each of these technologies, each of these products, we look for partners who are able to take those forward.
And there's a question here, Tony. Is there any chance any potential partner has flagged that they're willing to help to fund these sort of products?
Look, that we're looking at all different options. I can say that over the last few months, we've had a significant amount of interest from different partners with different opportunities. Whether it's funding product development, whether it's licensing, all of those different opportunities are being looked at by the board, and we're I guess investigating those and taking those forward.
Great, Tony. That's all we have time for. Fascinating to hear the story again and to watch your progress. Thanks for your time, and we'll follow with interest.
Great. Thanks, Tim. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, everyone. That's all we have time for this week, and next week is Good Friday. Enjoy your Easter. We'll be back the Friday after. Ciao.